All right. We got one person in the chat. I'm gonna wait just for a few minutes. I've not done a live in a long time, so I'm hoping that's all that it is. I'm hoping that's all. That's the reason we got only mono in the chat right now. Okay, cool. Oh, that looks good. That looks even much better. 10 I'm seeing coming up. All righty then. Oh my goodness. It's good to be back. It's definitely good to be back. Press 1 in the chat if you can hear me loud and clear, crisp, no echoes, no lag, no breaking up. Press 1 in the chat if you can hear me nice and clear. We've got a nice show for you people tonight. So I just want to make sure there's no hiccups. That's about this. Yay. IP Kickboxing or IP Kickboxing says to give them a facelift, pun intended. Yeah, talking about the thingamabob, are you? The my thumbnail. Yeah, I liked it too. I definitely liked it. Take myself off there. Okay. Right. Mark Hawkins says 1. Good Baleada says 1. Thank you. I've never Balida. Is it Balida or Baleada? Sounds a bit Spanish, Espanol. All right, guys. I didn't put a description on this live because I just wanted to keep the mystique a little bit. We got a special guest tonight, by the name of, well, his YouTube name. Some of you might have come across him. Just wait a minute. I'll wait a few more minutes. Some of you are still popping up in the chat, and some of you still, there's more people joining the stream right now, so we'll just wait a few more minutes before I do that. But yeah, I got a special guest this evening. I think I prefer the lives where I have people joining me rather than just me on my own. I'm much more interested in other people and other people's knowledge than I am myself on my own. I mean, I spent 24/7 with my own thoughts, don't I? On my own research. I want to hear what other people got to say. Good Baleada says that thumbnail, loving it. Mark Hawkins says 1. Thank you, Mark Hawkins. What else we got? Oh, Wildflower's in the chat. Hello, Wildflower. Nice to see you in the chat. Okay. All righty then. Let's go. Yeah, I'll start. People can join us and catch up as we go along. Right, guys. I have with me tonight somebody very, very special. Right, you guys have heard me talk about. Let's see. Who you heard me talk about? You've heard me talk about Kweli Mika. You've heard me speak about the King's Monologue. I talk about the King's Monologue all the time. I mean, come on. How could you not? How could you not? That brother's making people cry. He's giving people nightmares. Left, right, and center. You've heard me talk about the late great Mr. Hemotep. You've heard me speak about, who else have you heard me speak about? You know, all of these brothers and sisters who are doing amazing work, putting our stories back at the forefront. How our history back at the forefront of things, digging up. I did a post earlier today in a community post on YouTube talking about how all we got, you know, where all we've got. We're trying to do this work of digging up the truth about black history, melanated history, and you know, no one's gonna do it. No one's gonna do it but us. But one of the people that got me started on this journey, whose content I used to watch probably before, certainly before the King's Monologue. I came across the King's Monologue relatively recently, but before even Kweli Mika. Shout out to Kweli Mika. If you guys don't know, if you're listening to me for the first time and you've never heard of anything about him, that's Kuelimika. Kuelimika. That guy's content is fire. Looking for him to return at some point. Yes, guys, smash the like button. I'm gonna leave that out there. Smash the like button. Thank you, Wildflower. I'm going too fast for myself today. But another brother, even before Kweli Mika, who really got me thinking, was a fellow by the name of Amazing Black People. Amazing Black People, nice and simple. You're left in no two minds about what what you're gonna get on that what you're gonna get on that channel, you know. So yeah, I remember binge watching his videos over and over and over back in the day, and thinking, like, only getting it in stages, only understanding it in stages, and thinking, oh, oh, oh. And my eyes just getting increasingly bigger and bigger, and wider as the realization hit me in stages. And I'm gonna plug that channel to death tonight. I'm gonna keep referring to the name of the channel so that you guys make sure you go into the channel and you subscribe. He's come back recently. He went on a hiatus, and he recently came back, and I was so glad to see more recent stuff coming up from his channel. So I just thought I'd reach out to him, and he was good enough to acknowledge me, and just to reach back out, and he said, yeah, let's do it, let's do it live, let's talk about this stuff. So I would like you guys to welcome completely with open arms and give him a nice welcome tonight in the chat, as we're talking amongst each other about some of the stuff he's going to be bringing forward. Just give him a nice welcome and listen intently and attentively to what we're going to be talking about tonight. I've got just a few of his videos up as a sample. He's been doing this for years, and I've got just a few of his videos up as a sample to show you the kind of detail that this brother's been bringing to the stage, the kind of work he's been doing quietly for the last few number of years. So yeah, I'm gonna bring him to the stage, but before I bring him to the stage, I want to show you guys something quickly. Actually, do you know what, let me just let me add him, let me say a welcome to all of you, to the Trill Nation. All right, brother, I'm gonna put you up now.
All right.
Right, go on. Amazing Black People, over to you. Can you just introduce yourself, please, to Trill Nation, people I like to call Trill Nation?
Well, it's me once again, Amazing Black People. I have no name. The channel's just called Amazing Black People, and I'm just all about the information and empowering other Black people around the world. Doesn't matter what you believe in. You're seeking that knowledge, I'm riding with you.
All right, exactly. That's what the channel is about. It's nice, and one of the things I like about the channel is that it's very pithy. It's just get straight to the point. Each video goes straight to the point. There's no, like, I like to beat around the bush sometimes in my introductions, as you can already hear from tonight. But the brother just goes straight into the information. It's sweet and sharp like that. All right. Before we start, I was hoping just as a way to kind of break us in, and because we're gonna be looking at some really detailed information tonight. But I put this thumbnail out because I was thinking of an idea for like a theme, and I normally center the theme of the lives around the thumbnail. And whilst I was thinking of the theme and the thumbnail, that was all that I could think about. Actually, when I considered Amazing Black People's work, I'm gonna call him ABP for short. And so when I was looking at ABP's work, one of the things that kept coming to mind is how much of history is a lie. So I thought, that's it. That's the thumbnail. That's the theme that we're going for. History is a lie, the whole thing. And that's actually a well-known phrase by Napoleon, supposedly. You know, a lot of these quotes, you don't actually know the truth behind them, but supposedly Napoleon said history is a lie agreed upon. Okay, so and that is essentially what it is, particularly when it comes to Black history. It's never truer than when that statement is never truer than when you're dealing with Black history. Now, I'm gonna share some of what I got up here, and we're gonna be looking first at one of brother ABP's videos on Nubia and Egypt, and that video is titled, I believe it's titled, look for it up here, Scholars and Egyptians, Egyptians and Nubian equals the same daddy, part 3. Um, which,
Yeah, on the channel, we put some crazy titles up. So yeah.
no, like I said, straight to the point. And that's what you get. That's. I'll come to that when I started watching. That's what attracted me to it. Like
Mhm.
there's not really clickbait at all. It is what you see is what you get, and you go straight into the information. But we're gonna be looking at
Yeah.
that video first. But I thought I wanted to preface um the information in that video by letting the people know that the thumbnail for today isn't clickbait, because when you look at the thumbnail that I've got up, um, unbeknownst to a lot of people, is that the Valley of the Kings, the Abu Simbel, for example, has been moved, and that's one of the major sites in Egypt, one of the major tourist sites in Egypt, and it's been moved not miles, I don't think, but it was moved. And part of why it was moved was because the Aswan region was flooded a long time ago. Now, why you would flood the Aswan region is still unbeknownst to a lot of people, because, well, apparently they needed that dam really badly. But the thing is, when you build a dam in that area and you flood that kind of a region, you're destroying thousands and thousands of years, and you're burying and drowning an untellable amount of monuments and stuff still undiscovered, stuff that could be the missing link to a lot of what we don't know about the ancient Egyptians. But they went ahead and did it anyway. Now, why you would do that if you were the heirs of such a amazing tradition, I don't know.
Hey,
So
Trill.
yeah,
Let me
go
just
on.
let me just add that the flooding of Lower Nubia, the destruction of the evidence, is all by design. They do it on purpose. Let me tell you something. There's some incredible stuff going on with those pre-dynastic Nubians, and they know it. And so they want to make sure that it's gone forever. That's why they flooded it, and it's also it's convenient for them too, and whatever other things that they want to use that water for. But definitely, like, they're destroying evidence over there. I want to let everybody know while I'm here, they are destroying the pre-dynastic evidence, including some of the oldest royal iconography that's found in Upper Egypt. They have scratched it out. I want to make a video about that one. They're scratching out the oldest. They've scratched out the oldest royal iconography in Egypt because it's too close to being to Lower Nubia. So yeah, I like what you're talking about here, Trill.
Thank you. Now, so I thought we'd start with that.
Hmm.
And I co-sign what you just said. That, like, I go back to Amazing Black People, his YouTube channel, and in that he doesn't mince words. He tells you what it is, but apart from not mincing words, he actually backs it up with data and evidence. He shows you the articles he's citing from. These aren't obscure articles. These aren't just some random person on a obscure blog on Reddit talking rubbish. These are academic articles he's showing up on the screen. So he backs all of this up with evidence. They are actually in real time destroying a lot of these monuments, and they're doing it under the guise of restoration. We'll come to that later on. But I just wanted to say, this live is about you, Amazing Black People, ABP. Right.
Hmm.
I wanted to know what got you started on this journey. How did you actually, like, what was it
Hmm.
that turned you into I just discovered the term, and
Yeah.
apparently I'm a hotep. I'm a hotep. Yeah, I
Right.
didn't know about that till like a few months ago. It's a phrase. It's a thing. But yeah, apparently I'm a hotep, and so are you. So what turned you to a hotep, brother ABP?
Specifically, honestly, man, I'm a big fan of world history. I'm a fan of everybody's history, human history. And when I got to Egypt, what really got me on it was actually the ancient Nubians, is seeing how they were mistreated by the academic empire, called slaves. And then I finally figured out why they were doing that is because, the Nubian is no different from the Egyptian. They're just living in different sections. And I've shown that over the years. They hate it, and and you know, my channel is more of a Nubian channel, I would say, than an Egyptian channel, really. And what the catalyst for me, I would say, was watching Sarah Seti, the general. You know, some of y'all may not have heard of him before, but you know, he would just go in such a savage manner while also showing the pictures, and that really, you know, just lit a fire in me to want to make my own videos. And you know, I would go on YouTube and look up information on Egypt, and there was never, there's close to no channels that was satisfying what I needed. So I just decided to do it myself. And the more I got into it, I started teaching myself, really, because I was learning a lot of stuff, seeing a lot of things that I never even knew could exist. And I decided to put it up so that everyone could easily find it and come to their own conclusions. And what really kept me going was actually the people that was coming to the channel back then. And this has been a lot of times where I just wanted to cancel the whole thing because there was a lot of work putting all that information together. And the people, you know, and what they say to me would really keep me going. And I would have these battles, certain channels like Super Egyptian and Phoenician 7. And the way they would try to clown black people in history and try to steal history for the Anglo-Saxon, you know, just really just turned the fire up even more. And I, you know, it was just complete shutdown. And, you know, and I've done this stuff in real life even before the channel. You know, I've gone up against, you know, Nazi lowriders, actual real Nazis in real life, face to face, complete shutdown, 100%. And I'm telling y'all this live on television right now. You know, I'm a militant and I'm very serious. You know, and yeah, you know, I come from a hardcore sort of like background where, you know, you got to be ready to be a black man in America. Maybe I'm, you know, maybe I'm outdated. Sometimes I feel like I'm outdated,
No, you're
you
not.
know, like, because, you know, it's a new school thing nowadays
No,
where,
they're gaslighting us, bro. No, you're not. You're not outdated at all.
yeah. And, but once you see it, you can't unsee it is the thing. And I can't unsee it now. And sometimes I wish I could go back to being innocent, but I can't anymore because
Mm.
I've seen too much. And you know, and nobody gets away with anything. Yeah, okay, you know, and yeah, but you know, it was a lot of work putting in that stuff. But you know, I would say just Sarah also said he really got me started. You know, it was also Ash Requesty looking at his Kemet New Taurus. You know, also Shaka Amos was a big influence on me because he's the one. You know, I credit showing the scholarship to Shaka Amos, but Shaka will go straight into the book, show you the page, show
Shaka
everything.
Amos.
Yeah, Shaka Amos, he's hooked up over there, or maybe he was with Sodnetter TV. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sodnetter. And yeah, this was all back in the day. Honestly, I don't watch that much anymore. But
Yeah, you've
yeah,
forgotten. You've forgotten more than you've forgotten more stuff than you know, some of us are just learning really. So you've been in the
yeah,
game for a while, man. You've been in the game for a while.
yeah. You know, honestly, I've been done a lot of research the past couple years. But I will say the research I have seen is just continuing along the same lines of what I was talking about before.
Mm.
And I said back then that it's just going to keep on going in this Nubian direction. And only thing they can do is just disrespect the Nubians some more. And
But the funny
yeah,
thing is, I'm gonna share this with this. Let me just present this. Um, okay, so if you're looking right now, you're looking at the Wikipedia entry on Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is part of a great complex of Nubian. I say Nubian deliberately because what you people don't know, if you look up on the
mm-hmm.
screen, is that on the right hand side, that's the location of Abu Simbel. That's the original location, anyway. Before it was moved a few, I don't know, maybe a mile or so during when they built the Aswan Dam. And it says here the complex was relocated in its entirety in 1968 to higher ground to avoid it being submerged by Lake Nasser, the Aswan Dam reservoir, as part of an international campaign to save the monuments of Nubia, Okay.
Yeah.
An artificial hill was made from a domed structure to house the Abu Simbel. The point there is Nubia and Egypt. People talk about Nubia as if they were separate, as if this is the thing. A lot of these
Yeah.
ignoramuses don't know that actually that was there was no hard border. The beginning of
Yeah.
Egypt was in Nubia. Everybody
Yes.
knows that. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Can you elaborate on that, please, ABP?
Yeah. There was actually a cultural entanglement. Some of my favorite stuff that I talked about on the channel was the cultural entanglement in the pre-dynastic era, where yeah, in the pottery, the material culture, not to mention the burial remains at Heracleopolis were closer to a Nubian than it was to the native Egyptians in the area, which tells us a lot. And yeah, sometimes the pottery was the exact same pottery. And there was never a time in Egypt where there wasn't some sort of Nubian influence, you know, all the way down to the end. Yeah, there was definitely a cultural entanglement, a real cultural entanglement. There was no border or anything. It was just different kingdoms going up against each other for supremacy.
Right.
And we see that with the royal iconography that's found at Custal, places like that. And also the fact that, you know, the iconography that's found on the rock art that shows the king, shows the original followers of Horus. The original followers of Horus were Nubians. And we know this because they have their bows. You know, they were from Talseti, the land of the bow. And they're identified as the original followers of Horus. The original followers of Horus was the Nubian, not the Turk Arab invader, not the Arabian, not a Germanic man. It was a straight black African man who was the original followers of Horus. And you know, here's the thing though, I'm not just talking, I've showed all of this.
You showed all of us, and we're gonna show it in a video. So just to quickly go back to what you were saying about how you came up. Um,
Hmm.
I want to know. You told. I don't know whether you told it to me personally. Now I don't think you told, because this is the first time we're talking vis-a-vis like this. But
Hmm.
so it couldn't have been like this. But you did mention it, I think, in a video or in a comment section or something, where you talked
Hmm.
about how it was an individual, an elder gentleman, an
Yeah.
older black gentleman who put you on the path to this
Hmm. Hmm.
information. Can you tell us that
Yeah.
story, please?
Yeah. I would actually say it was you know, it was a multiple instances, but you know, that was probably the earliest point where I was walking through the mall and I had on a Mac Dre shirt that said Kush. And, you know, he stopped me in the mall and says, "You know what Kush means, right?" You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a weed." He said, "No, that's the ancient Ethiopians." He said, "You got to do your research. You got to do your homework." I said, "Yeah, okay." And I just kept walking, but I never forgot what he said about Kush. And so, you know, fast forwarding later, you know, I wish I could tell that guy, you know, yeah, I definitely know what Kush is now, you know, and the Kush tick, all of that. And yeah, I love him for that. But, you know, after that, I still had other people that would just keep getting at me. It was always older people who would tell me to do some type of homework, do some type of research, stop being ignorant. And, you know, there was a lady in my life who I guess I can describe as a godmother. She was real hardcore about Egypt. I'm talking about she was a true hotel. Talking about she was reincarnated. She was a reincarnated Egyptian queen. That's how
Mm.
crazy she was about it. But she would get at me, and then eventually, when I started the channel, started telling her the stuff that I was putting on the channel. It was like I had surpassed her enthusiasm about it, even, and my enthusiasm increased the more that I learned because I realized that these people have been doing nothing but lying every single day. They change the
Every
stories
single
up.
day.
Yeah, they change the story up whenever they feel like it, and expect you to go along with it. And I'm like, nah, man. That's why I love showing the old stuff. Where I say, why did they say over here in 1859 that almost Nefertari was an Ethiopian princess? But if you try to say that now, they act like they don't know what you're talking about.
They do.
And I'm
Yes,
like,
yes.
nah,
This
man.
this is a real phenomenon. You will look
Yeah.
up something. In fact, I had a brother tell me today that some of the research they've been doing on ChatGPT into the black
Hmm.
presence on the American continent. Um, They've been storing it on ChatGPT. ChatGPT literally, I don't know how ChatGPT works because I'm not on it, but this
Yeah.
brother who's quite adept with it says ChatGPT literally wiped out all the information. He hadn't archived it or saved it, taken it, made it local. So I don't know
Yeah.
how that would work, but he hadn't done that. But all these other chats on ChatGPT were left. But the one that was looking into, I guess, information that he wasn't supposed to be looking at, ChatGPT just
Hmm.
removed it, just completely ages like reams and reams of genetic work. But this is something I'm finding with this work,
Yeah.
not even outlandish work now, just looking at the African continent. Some of this
Hmm.
stuff disappears. Like I'll look back like maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, and I'll be like, oh please, Lord, do not tell me this is gone because I know how these people operate. And it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Wikipedia will have scrubbed it. So I don't know. Maybe they're noticing like a click rate and they're thinking, oh my, so whoever it is who's in charge of this stuff,
It's
who's butt hurt, whatever, somewhere in his
yes.
mom's basement, is seeing the click through rate on a particular topic and saying, oh shoot, people
It's
are learning
pathetic.
about this. And then they just wipe it.
It's pathetic. They're weak. That's why they got to do that. You know, and I already know with the AI, they're gonna have the AI be a Eurocentric AI. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna tell you a fake story about everything. He's gonna tell you a fake story about anything that has to do with any type of Black history. And I don't know, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know what we could do about it other than making sure that you chronicle everything in real life. That's why I was putting
Thank you.
pictures up.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. You can't we can't be relying on these digital interfaces and just we can't be. I know we get lazy, brothers and sisters, but we've got to start buying the books,
yeah,
the books are important. When I have a guest on that's got a book and you like the information he's given, please buy the book. Sometimes we spend more on a weekend out,
yeah,
than we would do on one of these books. We have to start buying this and keeping this information stored in our own private libraries. I just want to do
but,
a shout out to Sir Facton. Sorry, brother. Sir Facton says
yeah.
peace and blessings to the brother Trill and his guest. Blessings to everyone here as well. Thank you, Sir Facton. My guest, by the way, is amazing black people. If you're in the chat, two things for me. Or if you're watching right now or you're watching this back, two things, two favors I need from you. Please hit the like button, okay? And go over to Amazing Black People on his channel on YouTube. Nice and simple, Amazing Black People, and hit the subscribe button on his channel. Great content.
Mm,
So, okay, so you met that in shout out to the OGs, the older the elders, we got to bring that back as a thing in our culture, listening and respecting the elders in the community. But yeah, you were listening to that OG and that OG told you Kush is actually a kingdom, it's actually an empire, and that's what
mhm.
started you off, and you just started like looking into the information. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so did you get any backlash then? Did you start the channel like a year from that incident, or what? Was it like
Oh
research
no,
first and then go on?
no. This was years after. Yeah, this was years after, and I had did extensive studies of the ancient Romans and also the Neolithic of Europe, and that actually helped me out a lot, to be honest, because it gave me a perspective when I looked at the Neolithic of Africa, the Neolithic of Northeast Africa. You let me know about different movements and cultural things, archaeology, pottery. I mean, it was a lot of subjects that I was covering. And I was just doing this. Originally, I did all that for fun because this is what I like doing. To me, I like reading that stuff and looking at it. And so, yeah, I did all that. I would take notes, have all kinds of stuff. And yeah, so when I got to Egypt, it was easier for me to place it in a sort of worldwide perspective and the things that was going on around it. So when they started talking about a Caucasian was incoming, the Caucasian invasion, I knew there wasn't any Caucasian invasion in Egypt at any time, especially some sort of like Anglo-Saxon walking in, you know, and the pushback that I would get was from saying that. And so there was a channel called Super Egyptian. There's a channel called Phoenician 7. And they would make videos clowning black people, saying everybody was Negro centric. talking about you just have low self-esteem. That's why you just want to attach yourself to other people's history. Like, first of all, that's what y'all is doing.
Do you get
Yep.
me?
Yeah, and I'm looking at them like they'll sit up here and look at something that's from the Middle East, attach it to a white man, and then sit up here and tell us that we try to do the same thing. I'm like, first of all, you wasn't anywhere except living in a cave. And then I'll show the cave. You know, I'll show exactly what they was doing. I'll show their pottery, show how it was nothing but junk, right? I'll say, here's what you was doing when they was building that pyramid. And it would make them so mad. And I would get attacked so badly. But, you know, I thought it was funny, you know, when anybody try to come to the channel and clowning me, you know, and if you're a Eurocentric critic, then, you know, to me, it's funny. I'm just going to take a screenshot and then start going in on the next video. And as far as pushback from Black people, not that much, you know, not very often, to be honest with you. Yeah, I
Mm.
really can't say I've been punished by Black people. I was fully expected to get punished by somebody getting mad at me and yelling at me because I know how it is. But you know, I always got support from Black people though, because you know I'm not against anybody. We don't gotta be pushing the
This is
same
the
line.
thing. This is the thing.
Yeah.
People, so, a lot of people automatically have their backs up, and I've said this. What I've noticed is when you are part of a culture that is used to having everything, you Western culture takes for granted. People embedded in the Western culture. I don't want to start using actual ethnic monikers. I know YouTube
Hmm.
the algorithm might get all funny because of that. But and I don't want people to think it's some again, this is part of it. People like to project their own deep-seated prejudices on others. You can't do
Hmm.
this work without mentioning the fact that it's been buried, and you can't mention the fact that it's been buried without mentioning who's buried it. And for better or
Yes.
for worse, the people who buried it don't look like us. So I'm not gonna
Yeah.
pretend like that's not part of the story. I can't pretend like that's not part of the story. What you can do,
Hmm.
if you want to be constructive, you want to help out, is stop bitching and moaning and get on board, get on side, and be like some of the good folks, some of the good them
Yes.
folks who are actually helping us out, rather than moaning and
Hmm.
so you come in, what are you talking about? This is reverse racism. Shut up, come on. So
Yeah.
this kind of stuff, I don't even know where I was going with that, but so I want to ask you this. I want to ask you
Hmm.
this. So you then started the channel.
Hmm.
So you kind of already answered this already. You got backlash, and did you? What did when you started doing the videos? What kind of comments did you get? So like, were you and how did you
Uh,
deal with that? Because I know you
it.
would have got lots of like weird comments, weirdo type comments. How did you deal
Oh
with that?
yeah. Well, that's like a whole story in itself. Most of the comments I would get would just be the comments, you know, that would down me would primarily just be racist comments.
Mm,
You know, that I'm a dumb Black American, that the African person hates me,
mm.
and stop stop looking at Egypt. Go look at West Central Africa. They would say,
Which we do
and
too.
yeah, they don't even know. I could just make a whole channel about that if I wanted to, but I'm like, no. What makes you mad is Egypt, so I'm gonna keep doing that.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I went ahead and did that, and they would try to clown me though, but you know, and they would make fake like profiles that they just created that day. I remember somebody made a fake Ethiopian profile to say that Ethiopian hates me, and I was and I remember looking at this and saying this profile picture is from Fashion Glamour, which is a Ethiopian models site, and I remember he put fake Amharic language in there that said gibberish because he didn't know I had an Ethiopian friend that could tell me what it said, and you know, and it was gibberish. And I went and I said, I know exactly who you are. You're Phoenician Seven, and you're over here pretending to be somebody else. And it basically was Phoenician Seven because they said, sorry, have a good day. After trying to clown me, and you know, it's just always like they would show a South Sudanese person, you know, in the war zone to say this is a pure Negroid, and you know, this is actually what you are, is type stuff like that. And you
Yeah.
know, it would just be just the dumbest stuff on the planet.
But
And I'm like,
this is the thing about that this is the thing about that.
mm-hmm,
These people, these types. Shout out to the King's Monologue. Thank you. It's good to see you. see you with us this evening, King's Monologue. He says their tears are my fuel, and he laughs. Same here. That's how I'm starting to see it. Actually, I started to be funny because some of these types, the same energy that they give out to. I did a post months and months ago where I showed Beyonce, and Beyonce within the American context is
Hmm.
sub-Saharan. She's black and this, you know. But you put someone that's darker than her on the walls of Egypt, you know,
Hmm.
the tomb walls in Egypt, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like that's not a black person. That's not a black person.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Or you put somebody like her in Egypt, around the Aswan region in the south of Egypt today, and
Yeah.
people will come out and tell you that's not really a black person, like you just said, the true Negro trick. That's not really a black person. Let me show you a black person. They
Man,
go
let me tell you
find
something. It is so beautiful that you are talking about this right now, Trill. Let me tell you, I love this so much. Thank you for talking about that. It's ridiculous. And I talk so much about that on the channel, man, where they go over all this Egyptian skin color. To me, it's kindergarten now because it doesn't matter what the skin tone is at the end of the day. It could be any, it's like a black person could be any damn shade. You know, it doesn't matter whether Beyonce is light. You know, at the end of the day, it's not a white boy. That's what I do know. You know, because sometimes you just got to cut through it. It just be like, look, it's not you. It's not a tan. You know, they try to debate me and say it was a tan.
Mm.
And I said, if this is a tan, then your ass is almost dead because some of these people are black as hell. All right. Like I showed a lot of Egyptian stuff where I'm like, bro, I'm not even black enough to be an Egyptian though. Because because some of this stuff is pretty dark. Very dark actually. And
Mm.
but here's the thing though, when they do all that, it's just to keep you arguing in a circle and stay distracted, you know, from, you know, increasing your knowledge. It's more better for
Bro,
you just keep arguing about a tan.
yeah, precisely. But bro, you said a while back, you said something about like, you know, how did you put it now exactly? You said you don't know if you're you didn't use this exact word, like a relic, or you feel like I'm old fashioned or something. I don't think you're old
Yeah.
fashioned at all, but because right now, the state
Hmm.
of play right now, I've been hearing stuff, but I don't know. I've not had time to look into it properly. I used to be really into knowing what's going on that side of the Atlantic, but I don't really know what's going on anymore out there. My work and research is keeping me busy. But
Hmm.
what's going on? I'm hearing that Trump's banning books.
Well, he's not banning books, but that they're. I know in Florida, the governor there, Ron DeSantis, they they want to ban certain books, and they also want to sort of have a PG version of slavery in America, or not talk about it at all, even I guess. And that yeah, they basically in the United States they want to control information and make sure that certain stuff is not getting out. And yeah, I it wouldn't surprise me if they just try to ban the books.
Wow.
But there is a lot of places though where what book is there is going to be censored, you know. So I don't know what we can do about that other than get into positions of power and stopping it.
Mm,
But you know,
mm.
you can't stop people from reading stuff because I've got all kinds of stuff that they try to bury. I just show it on the channel instead.
Well,
So yeah.
well, yeah. What you said about Florida is what keeps coming back. Florida keeps coming back whenever I look into this. Know thyself. Shout out to Know Thyself, another content creator out there. Thank you. We got heavyweights in with us tonight. We've already seen the King's monologue. We've seen Know Thyself. He says the death ban in books teaching Black history in the state of Florida is punishable by 5 years in prison. Okay, now Know
Wow.
Thyself. Now listen. I gotta check that out. I've got to check that out. That's a big
Sounds
claim.
crazy.
That's a big claim. My word. If
Wouldn't
that's
surprise me.
true,
Wouldn't
my
surprise me at
goodness.
all.
Anyway, look. Let me go on to this. I want to play this video because I wanted to anchor this chat around some of your work so that people can have a real feel for the information you put out. So
Okay.
this video is about the Nubian and the Nubian connection with Egypt.
Okay.
Um Let me just read this out. He says, Know Thyself says, my brother is a teacher and one of the leaders out here fighting for education. Shout out to him. That's just incredible. That is absolutely incredible if that's happening. And you know what? I can't believe it. I'm being facetious. I can't believe it because it will all be done under the guise of I can imagine it being done under the guise of uh anti-wokeism, perhaps. Anti-wokeism is why they would say they want to ban some of this information. But anyway, let's move on. I want to play a video. Oh, before I play the video, this right here up on the screen is a painting of the region where you had the Abu Simbel complex originally before it was
Mhm.
moved. And these are the people that you would see there typically. Okay, these ladies there, black skinned as anything. These are Nubians. This is well within the borders of ancient Egypt. Well within, in fact, most of the cultural, spiritual, um, uh, archaeological, architectural heartland of Egypt was in the south, right on that Nubian region of Egypt.
Yep.
And that shouldn't surprise anybody. But these are the paintings. When people say that we're making stuff up about it's more again, going back to the thumbnail, it's actually, history is a lie because it's actually more unbelievable. This is how bad the gaslighting has got. It's actually more unbelievable today to some people that black people built these monuments than it is
Yeah.
believable that aliens did it. It's actually more believable to
Yeah.
some people that black people did it than aliens.
Let
That's
me just
what I mean by history's a lie. Go on, APP.
let me just say right now, that right there, the ancient aliens saying the alien couldn't make it. They go to South America. They're like, oh, this little Native American could not have possibly have made this stone city. But if you ever notice, it's always a European saying that. It's always a Caucasian saying it. Now, all the ancient stuff is located in Asia, always located in South America, always located in Africa. Notice how they never once ever find anything ancient in Europe, especially Western Europe. I mean, you'll find some stuff over there near the Mediterranean, but we're talking about Germany, France, Spain, you know. Now that's I'm talking about before the Indo-Europeans arrived, right? But they never have anything ancient to show. Actually, they never have an ancient city, they never have an ancient kingdom. This is why they always start with the Greeks, who are nothing more than some dudes that showed up yesterday compared to the Egyptian. And so since they have nothing, they say, oh, well, there's no way you made that because we didn't make it. So you couldn't make it. So it has to be
Mm,
the alien that made it.
mm,
It has to
mm,
be
mm, mm.
or some spiritual being, or maybe it was a big bird, or as long as it wasn't an actual human being.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm trying to say ultimately is that they have an insane sense of jealousy and inferiority complex, so that they'll just rather have a fantasy land of an alien than having put that face.
I'll move off of that. Sorry about that. I was, yeah. But when like you said, the word there is inferiority complex. There's a massive inferiority complex because otherwise, I've
Hmm.
never heard that put forward about Roman architecture, Roman civilization, Greek civilization. I never heard that. But when it comes to the
Yeah,
pyramids, but at the same time, some people also try to disparage some of these things, and they say, I've
yeah.
heard people on you've heard sometimes you'll see in the comments, you'll see a comment like, I don't know why you guys are trying to claim Egypt anyway. It's just a bunch of the pyramids are just a bunch of rocks piled on top of each other. It's like, what? Oh, so now it's just a bunch of okay,
Yeah.
human beings can have done it. It has to be aliens, but at the same time, it's just a bunch of rocks piled on. Oh my
They
goodness.
got brain damage. That's all it is. It's brain damage.
Let's it definitely sounds like it. Let me um let me do this. Let me play this video.
Okay.
I'm gonna remove this from the screen, and as and when I would like you to stop it, just say the word, and I'll pause it, and you can run a comment or whatever. I'll try not to interrupt too much because
Okay.
this is I've done too much talking already. But if I do stop it, it'll be to ask you a particular question about something or the other.
Okay.
So I'm gonna present this now. Just bear with me, family. Okay. What's this going on? Yeah. Here we go, and here we are. Let's go. Okay.
Deep in the south, in areas such as Aswan, in the west.
Let me know, fam. Can you hear that properly? Is the volume good on that? Press 1 if you can hear the volume on, or if the volume's good on that video. Press 1, please.
Hey, let me just add before you play that
Yeah.
these are some. This is like the old school videos, and back then I was recording on my cell phone and making it on a cheap ass laptop. It's not going to be the
Bro,
highest of quality.
I don't even even the stuff I made yesterday, even the content I made last week, I do not dare listen back to it, and I don't
Yeah,
dare listen back to it. So I know this must be agonizing for you, and I'm
I'm
sorry
cringing
about
right
that.
now. It's
Sorry
okay.
about that. So
All right.
creator to creator, I know I know the struggle. I know what you're feeling right now, but please just just
Yeah.
ignore that bit, yeah.
All right.
I'm sure it sounds much better to the rest of us than it will to you, but that's this, I'm speaking from experience, so yeah.
All right.
Anyway, all right, let's hit play now. Thank you, family. Thank you. Everyone says 111. That's good. All right, let's go.
Western deserts parallel to the Nile, these will be considered peripheral areas. And we start to see this cultural entanglement. And there is an entanglement of this Nubian and Egyptian element from the beginning. Alright guys, I'm back again with the third episode of Black Egypt Review. We've been going over a concise history of the origins of pre-dynastic Egyptian culture. We're focusing strictly on the pre-dynastic period. And today we'll be talking about archaeology. This video today is I'm going to walk you guys through the Egyptian culture diverging from this Sudanese tradition. Right here in relations between Egypt and Nubian in the Gada period, in the formative years of Egyptian civilization, at the earliest stages, the Neolithic of the Sudanese tradition strongly influenced the culture of Upper Egypt. Here's that.
Okay, some folks saying it's a little low, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out of this. I'm gonna take out of this, and I'm gonna do present it in a different way. Okay, bear with me, fam. I think that will make all the difference. Okay, let's just.
It does sound kind of low.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Deep in the south, in areas such as Aswan.
Sounds worse. Yeah.
Okay, and present here. Okay. What's this? Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think it might be better for me to elaborate a little more.
Yeah, go on. Give us a bit more
on some of
background.
it. Just go back again. Go back forward again.
Okay.
Western deserts parallel to the Nile, these will be considered peripheral areas. And we start to see cultural.
Okay, pause right there.
All right, cool.
Okay, this picture right here, all of that is Nubian evidence in the pre-dynastic period. And so we got the falcon, we got actual, we got Peor, it's an ancient, pre-dynastic Nubian king. We also, you see right here, we got the white crown, we got the falcon, we got everything, man. This is all found over there in Lower Nubia. This is not Egyptian. We got the scorpion, we got King Scorpion up in Egypt. We also got another, we got the scorpion right there found in Lower Nubia. This is in areas that they said, this is where the so-called black people was living. There was no Egyptian over there. So we got to remember, they said there's no Egyptian over there. Okay. But then they found this stuff, then you wonder why they want to flood, flood that area. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff like this over there, but it's flooded now. All right. Go ahead.
Entanglements of this Nubian and Egyptian element from the beginning. All right, guys, I'm back again with the third episode of Black Egypt Review. We've been going over a concise history of the origins of pre-dynastic Egyptian culture. We're focusing strictly on the pre-dynastic period, and today we'll be talking about archaeology. This video today is I'm going to walk you guys through
you can fast forward a little bit.
Diverging culture of Upper Egypt. Here's a map of southern Upper
All right,
Egypt.
go ahead, pause right here.
Okay. But how's
go
the
back to
sound now? How's the sound to you? Is it better? Is it okay?
Yeah, I would say for this video, sound is terrible. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Some of the early videos, the sound's terrible.
Okay, so guys, just bear with that and just turn it up. King says it sounded better before. Is that true, guys? Do you think it sounded better before? Because if it sounded better before, I'll put it back on the format it was before, and I'll just ask you guys to. Okay, someone says it's better now. That's cool. That's cool.
All right.
Right. So yeah, go on. I paused it right here. Go on, talk to us about this.
Can you go back to the previous article before this slide right here?
Okay. This one?
No. You can just hit play. Yeah, that right there.
Okay.
Let me see if I can zoom in on this. All right. Yeah, the formative years. Yeah, this is what I was talking about in the Neolithic period right here. The Sudanese, a lot of that evidence down there, is related to Sudanese traditions that, that stretches all the way down to Khartoum. And this is long before there was anything Egyptian. So I would say on the channel, I talk a whole lot about these formative years. These are the earliest years of Egyptian civilization. And so essentially the earliest Egyptian kings, earliest Egyptian social stratification was more related to Sudanese traditions and also areas in the Western Desert and stuff like that, rather than West Asia, rather than even stuff going on in Northern Egypt. And it has nothing to do with a Sumerian, nothing to do with Babylon, nothing to do with Anatolia. It's married to this so-called Nubian Ethiopian. And that's what we're talking about right here. And that's pretty much what this video is going to be about. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the old format and then we'll see.
Deep in the south, in areas such as Aswan and the western deserts parallel to the Nile, these will be considered peripheral areas. And we start to see this cultural entanglement and strongly influence the culture of Upper Egypt. Here's a map of southern Upper Egypt. This is the most important section of the pre-dynastic period. Not northern Egypt, not Mesopotamia, not Germany, none of that. Maria Gatto observed that Nubian pastoral culture had a great deal of influence on ancient Egypt's social development. This was written in the Egypt in its African Context volume, presented at Manchester. She convincingly demonstrated that the Nubian pastoral nomads were the African ancestors of Egypt and also played a role in the origin of the entire African pastoral tradition. Her analysis also showed that influence between Egypt and Nubia went both ways, not just one way.
Go ahead, pause it.
Clearly demonstrated that.
Go on.
Yeah, that's very important. That these influences, because a lot of times in the literature, what they'll tell you is that the Nubian copied the Egyptian, and he was always getting influenced all the time by the Egyptian. But actually, it went both ways, back and forth. The Nubian influenced the Egyptian, and the Egyptian influenced the Nubian, and that's how it always was. Even something as simple as a pot. There's a pot that they call a Nubian pot. It was made specifically like the Nubian way. That was their pot, but it was normal, in the history to find that pot in an Egyptian house. And this goes all the way down to 25th dynasty. It explains why they were so adamant on going over there to become the kings of Egypt, because it looked at it as their property too. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the thing. We find this again and again and again. So if you had the cognitive dissonance that these researchers have, then you constantly living in a very confused world, because they're constantly finding things that should be Nubian because they've put their fake labels on things. They're finding it in places that aren't quote unquote Nubian or the Nubian part of Egypt, and they're working hard post facto to then try and reclassify. It's a very disturbing part and area of their research. So, for example, I'll be reading what's her name now? I can't remember her name. One of these researchers, she's got a major cognitive dissonance, and she puts up some good
Yeah.
things. But one thing that she does is she constantly reclassifies. She'll find a statue in Lower Egypt or whatever, and
Hmm.
she'll say this is a Nubian in a Egyptian context, and it's like, where did you get that from? Is there an
Yeah.
inscription anywhere? Is there what are you basing that fact on? But if you take away all of that, it's as
Hmm.
simple as these were one people. These were one
Yes.
people, different shades of skin tone, different shades of black, but they were one people. It's literally like the division between the English and the Welsh. Like they
Yes.
the English and the Welsh or the English and the Scottish, they fought since forever. But you wouldn't come to the UK, you wouldn't come to Britain today and say, well, you might, the equivalent is to 2,000 years from now to be looking back at like I don't know, some dug up things from now and be saying,
Hmm.
it was quite clear they had a referendum in they had this thing called, because we had a referendum is where everyone voted like a few years back about whether Scotland should remain part of the Union of United Kingdom, and
Right.
the Scottish people voted to remain as part of the United Kingdom. But imagine
Yeah.
2,000 years from now, if you're one of these people with their mentality, you'd find
Hmm.
evidence of this referendum and you'd say, see, they were clearly different people, they were clearly different ethnicities, the Scottish and the
Yes.
English. they were they,
Yes.
they couldn't have been white. The Scottish couldn't have been white like the English, because look, they fought and they were. It's just it's stupid stuff like that. It's how that this is the artificial boundaries they put um on places and periods that didn't have those boundaries. They warred, yes, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything. You know.
Notice how they primarily do that with Egypt, though. Right. Like I remember
Yeah.
I had a college history class, and the teacher was talking about the history of the Native Americans, and he said that from North America all the way down to South America, they were all one people. And I looked at this man, and I was like, I wonder if he would say the same thing about a Nubian Egyptian. I literally thought that
Right.
in my head. Right.
Right.
Much smaller area. So we got thousands upon thousands of miles, and they still do that to this day. Yeah, the Native Americans, they're all one people.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, it's crazy how they can all be one people. But
Yeah.
you go to Africa, they got all kinds of Negro land sections for you. You know, you know what I'm saying? Like you got the West Central Africa, then you got North Africa, then you got the
Yeah.
East African, who's not allowed to be any part of a Central African. And they even do that with Sudan. And
Yep.
to me it's remarkable, and we've got to resist that. I
This
don't go
is
along
why
with it.
I've started to take more seriously now. Again, look, don't come for me, some of you in the chat. I know you got different disposition to me, but I'm warming to, or not warming to, but I'm at least more open now to the folk that say, look, they call them pretendians, but the folk that say, we've been on the American continent since forever, we were the natives. Now, I do believe there was what I've come to understand now is they've suppressed some black presence on the Americas well before Columbus. I don't believe they were the majority, but I wouldn't have even thought of that. I wouldn't have even considered that about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, but this is why I'm starting to warm to that idea now, be open to more of these ideas. Because if this is what they can do on the African continent, if this is how they can like molest the information in Africa, bro, what
Yeah.
they do, what don't we know? Do you know what I'm trying to
Well,
say?
let me tell you this. I actually showed on the channel their old writings where they just straight up wrote down that there was black people walking around over here in Mexico, South America. Yeah. They also I showed the quote from some old European book where they talk about the ancient blacks of California. And I've showed stuff written by the Mexican who said that the Negroes was here with us. And they don't write this anymore. This is like early 20th century stuff going all the way back to the early explorers. So that they did straight up write down I showed it and everything. That there was black people walking around over here. Now, was there a big black society? I haven't seen any evidence for that, but I do got, quite a few pictures of statues of black people that was
Well,
left
that
here.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense because,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know why anyone, I don't know who, I don't know why ever why it never crossed my mind to think, well, we weren't just waiting for Columbus to show up, like, and
Yeah.
cross an ocean that is like shorter when you're on our coast than it is when you're on their coast. From Spain
Yeah.
down to some of these places in the Americas is far of a longer route than it is just across West Africa. So I don't know why
Yeah.
it never dawned on me to think, come on, man, no one was waiting on Columbus.
No. Oh,
Cross the
no, no,
ice.
no. Let me just say too that for a long time I was very much against this whole idea of black people in North America or South America because I didn't see any evidence for that. I guess it was because I wasn't trying to look at the evidence. When I did look at the evidence, I said, you know what? They most definitely left some type of evidence. Yeah. And one theory that makes sense to me is that I don't know where I read this, but the Spaniards, when they were over here, they had claims to the land, the
Mm,
Portuguese, and
mm,
they didn't want to fight against more claims,
mm.
if it's already black people here.
Of course, because what they
Yeah.
do is they stick a flag wherever they go. They stick a flag down. They say, "Oh,
Hmm.
this I claim this land." So you can't be there finding. You just got done clearing off the Moors in Europe at that time. You just got
Yeah.
done clearing the
Hmm.
Moors off out of Spain and Portugal. You
It
can't be
must have drove them crazy.
Oh,
It
we
had
got some.
to.
We got some more here too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
So
okay,
it,
cool. Let me go on. Go on.
no, no, no. Go ahead. It makes sense to me that they would suppress any information because they have to keep their territorial claims intact.
Mm. Big up, big up. All right, let's hit play again.
Hmm. All right.
Nubia's role in the social development of Africa is very real. There was no major migration or replacement events occurring in the pre-dynastic or early dynastic period of Egypt. This was all a local development. As for the prehistoric wanderings of Indo-Europeans, they were still trying to figure out where they were going. The Delta did not have pre-dynastic Egyptian kings, nor did they have any sort of political social structure such as the southern Egyptians had. And
Hey,
we
go
need
ahead.
to
Pause it
remember
right
that when
there.
they make this big
Okay, let me
focus
put
on the
the
Delta,
pause.
trying to
All right, go on, bro.
Okay. Yeah, what I just said right there about northern Egypt, yeah, that goes into what you said earlier about how, the spiritual heart is in the south of Egypt. And in the pre-dynastic period, northern Egypt, they were not rolling like that. There's no evidence that they had an army. There's no evidence that they had a king. And back in the day, they tried to say there was a lower Egyptian king, but there was no lower Egyptian king in the pre-dynastic period. All the kings were in the south.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
And then they went up and conquered the north, and made a justification for that. But there was no kingdom up there in that area. There was definitely people coming in from West Asia there, but that area had more in common with West Asia than anything going on in Sudan or southern Egypt. And so yeah, we got to remember that what they try to do is try to make that area into some sort of like rival or something in pre-dynastic, but they don't have any evidence for that. And everything there is also lower quality than in the south. You talk about the pottery is of lower quality. The stuff in the south is high quality. And
Yep, yep.
this is why nowadays, if you ever notice, they say we found a new Egyptian discovery. It's always in northern Egypt. The stuff they publicize is always going to be around Cairo or somewhere over
Yes,
there.
because they worked out that look, we've got to equilibrate, we've got to equalize now because we
Hmm.
a lot of these things that we're finding, a lot of they know that a lot of it is
Yeah,
based in
yeah,
the most important Egyptian monuments, things excavated, tombs, temples, whatever. Thebes, you're looking at Upper Egypt slash Nubia, and I've said this
yeah,
in another video. It's like we don't even have to go to the places some of these people are trying to take us. They're trying to mire us. Currently, there's a culture trying to mire us in genetic studies. They're trying to mire us. These people, they can watch a very well done video with evidence left, right, center. on anybody's channel, across any channel, without history, my channel, the King's Monologue, anybody out there, okay? And
Hmm. Hmm.
the video production values, the evidence brought to bear would be amazing, everything. But you'll see in the comments, still doesn't change the fact that the genetic studies have been done. Genetic studies have been done. This is the thing that they can't, they've lost the argument everywhere else. But currently, they've got a little beachhead in the name of genetics. So which will come for them on that too. I see lots of people doing good work debunking them on the genetics as well. But
Hmm.
they you talk about finding things and publicizing things found in the north of Egypt now, and that's deliberate because they want to
Hmm.
prove that they know what the optics are like. They know how bad it looks. That a lot of the main artifacts, the things that stick in the public psyche from ancient Egypt, this stuff
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
from the south, it's from Nubia, it's from that
Yeah.
region, and they
But
know they've got to balance it out. So a lot of the things I'm seeing, like you're saying, coming out
yeah.
now is, oh, this was found in Cairo, but basically stuff from a time and a place that's not
Yeah.
really Egypt anymore. We're talking about the Ptolemaics.
Yes. They love the Ptolemies. Let me ask you this. You see this, what you have up here right now, all of these, all these drawings. Let's just say all that right there. Let's just say that was found somewhere in Germany, and it was dated from the Neolithic. This would be publicized in the newspaper. They would put it in the books. They would teach all the
Mm,
children that
mhm.
these pre-dynastic Egyptian white crowns and falcons is found in Germany. So the German must be an Egyptian now, right? But you find this in the area that they said was nothing but some black people hanging out, and we never hear about it. It's just me, you know what I'm saying? It's just me with my 100 viewers looking
Mhm.
at it,
Mhm.
and it's a corruption, and they don't. It's a corruption to me. It's corrupted.
Mhm.
This is some of the most important stuff, in history. They've refused to even acknowledge it exists. You can obviously look at it and read about it, but they're not going to show it to you on the History Channel. They're not going to tell you. They're not going to tell your kid about it at school. What they're going to
Mhm.
do is say, "Hey, this is Narmer. He was the first Egyptian king. Time to move on now." That's
Yep.
it.
The first king, the guy who created Egypt.
Yeah, and they just skip all of this. Just start with Narmer, and it's a shame. Actually, it's an embarrassment, and I just still feel like something that's got to be done about it. But honestly, I don't know what we can do about it other than talk about it.
That's the
We need
thing.
more.
I used to be apologetic when I started the channel. I noticed when I look back, when I dare to click play on an old video, dare, because I cannot stand it, I die inside. But when I can,
Hmm.
when I feel brave and I click play on one of my very old videos, I notice the apologetic tone, and that's something that's changed.
Hmm.
There's just too much evidence, and it's sad that, as you said, it's us that has to bring it to bear. Um,
Yeah.
so when it's that way, you kind of realize, you know what? Don't be apologetic anymore. These people don't care. You're the only one that's gonna do this and that's gonna do it properly and honestly. Um, Even the people supposedly on our side sometimes,
Hmm.
I notice that they're not 110%, straight as well. They try to kind of downplay the black elements a little bit sometimes. Let me just read out the super chat from the King's Monologue. Thank you,
Hmm.
people. Thank you, King, with that £20 super chat. If we differentiate the Tarsetians, then we must also differentiate Thebans and Memphites. Tarseti, so-called Nubia, was as much part of Kemet as Waset or Men Nefer. Kush was separate, but Tarseti Nubia was Kemet, and he does a big fist bump at the end there. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that, King. But
Hmm.
that's true. That's exactly true. You can't you you have to start making these artificial divisions everywhere if you're doing that.
Yeah. The artificial divisions is something that never stops. So, with Egypt, even with Africa, with everything in life, it's all about artificial divisions.
Yeah, I see you, East Side. East Side says, I know exactly what you're talking about there. There's work coming in that area. That's definitely true what you said, East Side. All right, let me hit play.
find Mesopotamian Egyptians. So let's start talking about ceramic traditions. We need to consider the Gilf Kabir. We need to consider Napta. We need to consider the Oasis. We also need to consider Western Egypt. And let's not forget east of the Nile Valley, too.
All right, go ahead, pause that real quick.
We're talking about.
Right, go on.
All right, so I just made a bunch of places. The reason why I did that is because, you know, there's certain teachers, certain individuals, they, you know, they pick their favorite section and say, this is where the Egyptian came from. But, you know, unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. People come from all kinds of directions, actually. And throughout the years, I've, you know, shown evidence from every direction that, you know, that the Egyptian people actually came from every direction. But it definitely wasn't from the direction of Germany. It wasn't from the direction of Anatolia. You know, they came from the west, they came from the east, they came from the south. You know, some people came from the north. And we got, and, you know, and it all sort of like mixes together, you know, to this Nile Valley civilization. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to second that point, because that's another thing that woke me up, is the fact that they never ran north. You know, whenever there was invasion, whenever there was, it was always from the south. Whenever there was a push back against any foreign element, it was always from the south, like from Nubia, literally from Nubia, the part of the part that's supposed to be different. It was always, whenever there was an invasion of any foreign thing, it was always from the north, and it was the pushback always came from the Medjay, the black as can be. Now that would be like me running to, I don't know, every time there's trouble here in the UK, me running to I don't know, Denmark, as opposed to like Wales. I don't know, it's just stupid. It would be like pretending I've got more of an affinity with somewhere like that than the people right by me, right next to me. And but they don't make that make sense. You know, they just, that's another thing they gloss over. It's like, if this is a Near Eastern or Middle Eastern civilization, why are they constantly looking to Africa for help? Why are they constantly rebuilding from Africa?
Yeah, if you ever notice that the Egyptian, when it comes to their most potent monuments, the most important monuments that the Egyptians ever made, you ever notice it's never, ever, ever anywhere in Palestine, anywhere in Israel, anywhere in Arabia, anywhere in Mesopotamia.
No.
It's always somewhere south of them, right? Like whether it's Karnak, whether it's Abu Simbel, whether, you know, even the pyramid is still there in Africa. You know, the pyramid's not hanging out in Mecca. But in the research, though, especially the American research, they always try to find some sort of weird way to start tilting things towards Mesopotamia in the Near East all the time. And it's a false equivalence, and that I think is abusive if you call yourself a teacher who's teaching students, because they keep trying to hold on to this Mesopotamian thing, you know, and they worship in Mesopotamia for some reason, you know. But here's the thing, though, it was black Mesopotamians too. It was black Persians. So everywhere they look, it doesn't matter.
Don't break that to them. You put people on suicide watch. You'd have to put people on suicide watch.
Black Babylon. They don't believe it. But here's the thing, though. The teachers who showed them these things first was already talking about Black Babylon. The teachers who showed them where these things were already talking about the Black Persians. But they won't tell you that now.
No, they won't. It's scrubbed. I'll hit play.
All right, go ahead.
The birth of Egyptian culture. What was going on at that time was a process of cultural mixing in the boundary areas. And as we see right here in cultural entanglement, this was clearly detectable in the material culture and is much more complex and multidimensional than previously thought.
Wait, go ahead, pause this.
Go on, brother.
All right, like just this quote right here is just an example of what I'm talking about. 1929, they the Boston Museum has two excellent portraits of an Egyptian and Ethiopian prince and princess. Dr. Reisner called these the earliest known portraits of Negroes. Now, Dr. Reisner is the same man who said that the Nubian was a white man. So
Yep.
here he is in his research talking about he has the earliest known portraits of Negroes, an Ethiopian and Egyptian prince and princess. And that's just an example. Yeah, that's 3000 BC. That's an example of how they're completely full of crap and change their story every 5 seconds. Like, if you, I don't know. To me, it's a joke.
Yep. Definitely. Definitely. Hit play.
Yeah, go ahead.
which is very true. Now, I presented Maria Gatto.
So I'm gonna do a quick pause there just to say shout out to Maria Carmela Gatto. I'm actually it would be really nice to have her on the channel, and I hope I can get her on. I like some of what she's written. I've got through one or two of her articles, and I love the information. She's big on the whole Nubia Egypt thing, and I'm glad that you cited her in this as well. But yeah, shout out to Maria C. Gatto. She's an OG.
I presented Maria Gatto on this channel about 4 years ago. She's very high powered and she does some very deep research on North Africa. Here she writes that what can be safely stated is that at this stage, evidence points to an earlier presence of Nubian population in the area. We see right here that early Upper Egyptian cultures were Nubian related, and also findings from the same age from both the eastern and western deserts. When it comes to the origins of Egyptian culture, there were influences coming from many directions, not just one direction. It is important to say, and this is something important to highlight, she writes, that the cultural substratum in Upper Egypt as a whole is mostly Nubian related, and the earliest evidence of the Nagata culture is attested in the Abydos Nagata region. From my last video, Prowse and Lavelle wrote that the ruling elite segment at Nagata was more of a Nubian type.
Pause right here. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is Prowse and Lavelle. This was a high status cemetery right here. In the this is an early high status cemetery in the Nagata period. And the high status cemetery had it was more closely related to the population in northern Nubia than to neighboring populations there in Egypt. And so that's very important because this was an elite high status cemetery, as in this is the people that was ruling in that area. Where they had more in common with the people down south than they did with the people that they was ruling over.
I noticed just so as a little bit of encouragement for us, and I think I put this down to people like yourself, Abe. Again, I'm with amazing black people this evening. I linked him in the description of this video. Make sure you check out his channel. Thank you, Sir Facton. Sir Facton earlier, I remembered he said he subscribed. So thank you. If you can take a minute right now, I wouldn't be bothered if you open up another tab right now and you get distracted a little bit. Just go heading over to that channel and hit the subscribe button, please. You've got no excuse. If you're in here loving this stuff right now, you got no excuse not to subscribe to that channel. Please encourage our brother. But one thing I notice is that this debate has gone from there were some blacks in Egypt, but they were mainly slaves. Well, I think actually there was a mix of them. Yeah, it was a mixed civilization. It was mixed.
Yeah.
It was mixed. That's where we're at right now. So just who does that if you're not a prevaricating, mendacious sort of a type, I'll keep it with the nice grammar. I won't go too far, but I'll keep it at that. Who does that if you're not just a straight up liar? You can't. The narrative has shifted from they were slaves to now it was a mixed society. You're gonna have to do better than that though, because we're keeping our feet on your necks. That's for sure.
I'll tell you this, they were a mixed society at some point, but the deeper in time you go, the blacker Egypt gets.
Thank you.
And that's just all there is to it.
Thank you. And in fact, actually, matter of fact, stay tuned, guys, because I've said this before, but there's a video coming on that, and you might think it's a one-man show right now, so it's hard to get everything I want to get out. But stay tuned. There is a video coming, about how that happened, how Egypt, and actually Egypt, surprisingly to me anyway, was far blacker. I might have to do a collab with the King on this one. I don't know if you're listening,
Hmm.
King, because the King put me on this. King put me on this with his he did a short a while back about just showed some old clips about showed some old clips from the early 1900s, and no, actually no, he did a full video. He did a full video about this, about the how up until very recently, if you went to Egypt, recently in relative terms, so 1920s, 1930s, you would still see a massive black population just all over the place, and they were as Egyptian as anyone else. Now, where that population went and how that population got pushed out and disappeared, unalived in most cases, that there's some real history behind that. Some of you have already alluded to that. You know your stuff. Some of you in the chat have already talked about the unaliving by some Ottomans. But that history is very, very dark. Wholesale. So my point here is that Egypt, actually, we talk about how the further back in time, actually, you don't even have to go that far back in time. You don't have to go for that far back in time. Their longest reigning sultan during the Muslim era, the start of the rise of Islam in Egypt, the longest reigning sultan was a black guy called Caliph Al-Mustansir Billah, 60 something years.
Hmm.
So they even up until recently, Egypt was quite black. I'm just gonna leave that there. I'm just backing up what you said there about the further back in
Okay.
time. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit play now.
Going back before that, the biological affinities of the people in southern Egypt were more related to Nubians. They were also related to later Egyptians. As far as the Near East is concerned, as far as Mesopotamia, there were long-standing interregional contacts, which is completely normal, but there was no migration, colonization, or domination. This has been stated many times. Ms. Gatto writes, it's highly unlikely that the arrival of Nagata means migration of people from the north, colonization, or domination of the local communities. But instead, what we see is an ideological system based on a shared set of beliefs and practices on both the personal and public levels. And so when we move forward, getting closer to Dynasty Zero, getting closer to what can be now identified as Egyptian culture, what we have is a cultural entanglement going on at that time. And when we have the rise of the Nagata culture of Upper and Middle Egyptian society, there becomes a split from the original root.
Hmm.
And what we see is Nubian elements in Nagata material culture and beliefs becoming less and less visible because now there is a new identity with a certain set of people.
Hmm. All right, go ahead and pause it.
And
Go on, bro.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen this video in a long time. Yeah. What I was talking about right there was like exactly, when we started to see a more separate Egyptian identity from the so-called Nubian identities. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to get this the page to
Hmm.
stay focused on a particular slide. So sorry, go finish your train of thought.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen this stuff,
Yeah, that's cool.
but
That's
yeah,
cool. I'll hit play. I'll hit play.
yeah, go ahead.
so deep in the south, in areas such as Aswan, in the western deserts parallel to the Nile, these would be considered peripheral areas. And we start to see this cultural entanglement. And I talked about this on the channel before, how we go through the material culture, and there is an entanglement of this Nubian and Egyptian element from the beginning. we see where Moscato writes right here that the archaeological discoveries of the past years clearly demonstrate that the first cataract was not a real border, just like how the Sahara Desert is not a real border.
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah, there was no border.
And as we move forward, as we start now seeing ideas of so-called Egyptian kingdoms rising up, then we start getting more independent ideas, more independent cultural elements, and we start seeing the concept of duality, Egypt in opposition to others. Examples of that can be found in rock art dating back to Dynasty Zero. Here on the screen, we see an individual from Ta City, the land of the bow. And these types of individuals were in Jubilee processions with the original followers of Horus.
Hey, go ahead and
Now,
pause
getting
it.
closer to Dynasty Zero.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, pause it right here. Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier, the original followers of Horus.
The
And
original what?
the original, what they call the original followers of Horus, and part of Jubilee processions and stuff. This, this is like this is the earliest known like royal iconography that's found associated with Egypt. And so, what this tells us is that before Dynasty Zero, that the Nubian was alongside the Egyptian. He's literally right there.
And I like the fact that all this is showing again is that all the cultural basically all the building blocks for what we know as ancient Egypt, this is where it's come from. So that when you have Diodorus Siculus or Diodorus of Sicily going and writing a few hundred years before Christ, saying that I've been to Egypt, I've been to the Kushites, and everybody's saying they came from the Kushites. Everybody's saying Egypt came from Kush. Their crowns, their religious system, their priests. Everybody's telling me these man came from me down from Kush. When we
Yeah.
read that, there's evidence. This is the evidence for what they're saying. This is the evidence for what these ancients were saying. They think these ancients, they make out whenever they touch this, when they touch these ancient accounts, they talk about them all of a sudden as though, well, that's what Herodotus was told, and that's what Diodorus was told. We don't really know,
Yeah.
They almost make it seem as though he was bumping into some hoteps even back then. Diodorus was just
Yeah.
bumping into hoteps in, and then
It's
it was the
crazy.
hoteps that were back in 2,500 years ago, telling Herodotus and Diodorus that they're from us, they're us. It was just the whole. So we were back there, but we we were there.
Right. It's like one minute Herodotus is the father of history. The next minute Herodotus is an Afrocentric.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But this is the evidence. This is the evidence. I mean, I came to understand recently that the first nome of Egypt was down in the south. Started in Tarseti, the land of the bull. Again,
Yes.
you
The
start.
first known.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes sense. It all starts to come together the more you look at it.
definitely right. Hit play again.
Start seeing
Okay.
images of the king smiting his enemies, symbolic representations of order over chaos. And it was at this time that the Egyptian royal ideology needed to have an other as a justification for its existence.
Right.
And so what we have is certain Nubian kingdoms that were competing with them, who went from being the same to becoming the other.
Wait, can you go back to that last one?
Yep. Go back to the last slide you said.
The last slide, yeah.
Symbolic representations of order over chaos. And it was
This
at this
one,
time that
yeah.
the Egyptian royal ideology.
This one, yeah.
Yep, go on.
Yeah, Bruce Williams. If you're not familiar with Bruce Williams, a lot of information that people get about the pre-dynastic Nubians starts with him, because he was part of the people that rushed to save a lot of stuff when it was getting flooded, and he went and uncovered a lot of things, including a lot of this royal iconography. And it says right here that he has a dynastic sequence of 12 rulers, and this is before the first dynasty. And by the end of this phase, pharaonic representations and burial customs, there's evidence of intentional contrast, which makes sense, because if you have Egyptian kings wearing white crowns, you got these new so-called Nubian kings wearing white crowns. There was some type of competition going on at that time. So it's obvious there was some kind of competition going on at that time, especially the way they depopulated Lower Nubia in the first dynasty.
Right.
Is so yeah, it was a high level of competition, even amongst the other kingdoms over there, Bidos, all those places. It was a high level of competition. This is how you had that singular
I,
power.
I suspect that, yes, I agree with you, but I suspect that that competition has been played up, has been over exaggerated.
Right.
Opinion, and that's been done recently, obviously, to kind of to yeah, like to other
The
the
the the, the Nubian, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, but you got to remember that they want to keep it obscure because the more obscure it is, the more we have to sit here wondering about certain things.
yeah, yeah. Because I see some I see iconography depicting Egyptians, just if not more, holding up lighter skinned people by their hair, and cutting them down. I
Oh
see
yeah,
that almost more than I see them doing that with the Nubians, so to speak.
definitely.
So
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I suspect. Anyway, I'll hit play again.
Needed to have an other as a justification for its existence. And so what we have is certain Nubian kingdoms that were competing with them who went from being the same to becoming the other. At this time, there was competition in the Nile Valley in the deepest parts of southern Egypt. Right here, Bruce Williams writes that also paralleling the rapid political development of the Nagata culture, pharaonic institutions appeared in a group Nubia, presented in as coherent a manner as found in Egypt. Before we started seeing this diversification of cultures, there was no A group Nubia and there was no Egyptian thing. Each of those things was a development of something previously that was more united. By the end of this early phase, we see pharaonic representations and burial customs, and there's also evidence of intentional contrast within a shared tradition, something that could be called a polarization. This itself goes hand in hand with what Ms. Gada was just saying, that the Egyptian royal ideology needed an other as a justification for its existence, and the Nubians went from being the same to becoming the other, and it's no small coincidence that the first nome of Egypt was Tarseti. In the northern Egypt, the delta had regionally characteristic features.
Yeah, it was off this. It was off this video that I heard it today.
Yeah.
But there are no signs of an evolving elitist state-based organization. The southern Egyptians were not competing with the north. When you compare that to Upper Egypt, they had centers of powerful territories, each ruled by a hereditary elite exercising authority on a regional basis. So when we go down to the south to see what this new Egyptian culture was competing with, we see the royal scorpion from the land of the bow. Again, when it comes to anything European or Arabic or anything else for that matter, they are nowhere on the scene. We have this individual from the land of the bow. This location where this is found at, also found at that location, are some of the earliest royal symbols of ancient Egypt. So we know that there were Nubians there when the very first, most earliest Egyptian kings showed up on the scene. Here we see palace facades, we see royal imagery. All of this is found with the Nubians, found with the Sudanese, found in southern Egypt. We have the Custal incense burner. Nubian tombs at this time were the same size as Egyptian tombs, and we see that both in the pre-dynastic of Egypt and also pre-dynastic Nubians, both wore the white crown.
I could pause it real quick.
Yep, I thought you might want to
Yeah,
pause.
I forgot about that part. That in pre-dynastic, the Nubian tombs are the same size as Egyptian tombs. And I remember showing pictures of some of this stuff. And so Nubian tombs the same size as Egyptian tombs, and the quality of the stuff that was in the tombs is just as good as anything in Egypt. And then, yeah, I'm showing right here, we have the White Crown of Egypt. Yeah, that's over there. That's found near Aswan. And then you have over here. This is found. This is labeled Nubian. That's some more rock art showing the White Crown. So we have two different, what they call ideas, two different people. What they claim is supposed to be two different people. One Caucasian, one black, but they both have the white crown on in the pre-dynastic period.
Hmm.
And again, this is never shown when they want to talk about the beginning of Egypt. This is never discussed. It's never shown. This is like
So
they've known this stuff.
what are you saying exactly there? What's the significance of that?
The significance is that whenever they talk about the origins of Egyptian culture, the origins of Egyptian civilization, they just basically say, yeah, it's Narmer time, and then we're going to the first dynasty,
Right,
right?
right.
Or they want you to imagine that the Mesopotamian man flew over there and became an Egyptian king, and anytime they find any sort of Egyptian evidence of anything in the world, they big it up. If they found an Egyptian pot somewhere somewhere in Wales,
Mm,
they're like, oh, we found an Egyptian pot over here in the British Islands.
mm.
It comes from the pre-dynastic period. We must be Egyptians now.
Or
But again,
let's even make it less hyperbolic, and let's say in like I don't know, Canaan, or in the or
yeah, or
Palestine
Canaan.
region.
Yeah, I'm obviously, going all the
They'll
way with
say
it.
they'll
But
definitely
yeah,
say they'll definitely you'll see that in we have the Daily Mail here. You have that in the Daily Mail somewhere. Oh, but you never. I get what you're saying. You don't get
yeah,
that when you have this much greater preponderance of evidence in Africa, in proper mainland Africa.
yes,
You don't get news about that. You don't get people saying, "Oh, look what we found in Sudan," and look at or if they do, it's in an academic article somewhere, and it's lodged in this is the this is what the Nubians did to try and copy the Egyptians, rather than no, it was all the same place. It was all the same thing in the same place.
yeah. I would say I'd say the significance of some of these images, goes a whole lot farther than simply being a copycat. I think that's a lazy excuse that they come with.
For
You
example,
know,
this white crown you're talking about, I've seen all the evidence I've seen shows me that it comes from not Egypt, quote unquote Egypt. We know what we're talking about, but it
hmm
comes from Nubia, comes from quote unquote Nubia. That's
yeah,
where the white crown. And when they say the king of the two lands, they're not just talking about Upper Egypt. I don't think they're talking about Upper Egypt there, because you've
hmm
got the first cataract starting in what is Nubia proper. Okay,
yeah,
that's in the Aswan region. That's right on the border with Sudan. So
hmm
that's the first cataract. And from what I understand of what's a cataract, it's a kind of uh where the river thins out, and it's thinned by a collection of rocks and boulders and whatnot.
hmm
But that would be a natural that would be a natural place to call for the ancient Egyptian to say, right, this is where nature's kind of, they're one land, but this is where nature has kind of shown that this is one land, the land part one and the land part two. Look at this. Look at
yeah,
where the river, that this great now kind of thins out, and then it starts again, and then you got all
hmm
the other the cataracts, the six cataracts. But if the first cataract starts in Nubia, then they're not talking about Upper Egypt being really Upper Egypt um being land number two. They're talking about, really, you're going further south than that when you want to talk about the two lands. You're talking about,
yes,
again, that border with modern day Sudan. That's what you're really talking about. you know
yes. Those
I don't
areas
know.
down
Press
there.
one in the chat if that makes sense. Press one in the chat if that makes sense. Sorry, bro. Go on.
Oh, you're absolutely on the right track, because those areas down there were very important to the Egyptians. They always made sure that stayed with them or was connected. Even all the way down to the New Kingdom, to the point that they literally would move down there and started marrying with the people. And they always made sure that the so what they like to call Nubian areas, Ethiopian, whatever you want to call it, that was literally like a part of Egypt to them too,
Mm, mm,
you know, and they always made sure that they were operating inside that realm of influence to the point that they were literally a part of the land.
mm.
And you don't see that for other areas, you know, which was, I would say, we're less spiritual and more business, you know, like up in
Right.
Lebanon, you know, for places like Lebanon, places like that, where it was more strictly business, whereas down south it was more spiritual, which is why got Abu Simbel down that way, and why they would literally just take Nubian princes, bring them up to the palace.
Mm,
Yeah, it's why it makes sense to me also that Amos Nefertari would be an Ethiopian princess,
yeah.
because somebody being an Ethiopian prince or princess going up to be with the king was a normal day,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Okay, so I'm gonna hit play. This is coming to an end. I want us to do one more video, if
Okay.
that's all right. One more video after this, yeah?
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you.
And so obviously they were striving with each other, but only one could reign supreme. Again, there was no extensive interpersonal conflict for control over others that they know of in the pre-pottery Neolithic of the Southern Levant, so we can get any idea of the Caucasian takeover out of our head now. But there was a infiltration of these people into Egypt to become Egyptians. That is true. And when we compare all of this to Mesopotamia, one thing that we do need to remember is that Mesopotamia, in ancient times, at this time that we're talking about, there was no real geographic unity, and it had no permanent capital city.
Hmm.
And it stands out from other civilizations with greater uniformity, particularly that of Egypt. I got that out of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Here we take a look at the fake Ancient Origins website, which is always printing up fantasy stories. They're over here talking about that was the capital of the Sumerian civilization. But when we go to an actual source, such as the Britannica, there was no geographic unity and there was no permanent capital city. The
Hmm.
Sumerians, Mesopotamians are always built up into something that they're not. When we continue to research through Encyclopedia Britannica, we see the first king to unite the separate city-states was in about 2800 BC, which is long after Egypt had already been established. And Sargon came hundreds of years later. Point of that being is that the Egyptians were organized long before the Sumerians were organized. Despite the fact that their cities are old, they were not united into any sort of nation or kingdom of any kind until later. And
Yeah.
so we walked through the origins of Egyptian culture. We could go much deeper, but this is YouTube and we don't really have that much time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bro, I'm gonna say do not doubt do not despise the small beginnings. That was, I know you think it was you didn't really like it, but that was chill.
Yeah.
That was chill. That's exactly that
Yeah.
was like there's overemphasis, and I do it too in my videos now. I think to myself, oh, I gotta get this video looking nice and have this and have that. But sometimes
Yeah.
some of the stuff, my content that really resonates with a lot of people is stuff that I just put out there. I thought, oh, just put it out. Doesn't really matter. It's not perfect like I want it to be. Just put it out. So that I really love that because it's simple. You're just showing from slide to slide. You're just showing the information, speaking over it in a cool, easy manner, and you got nice chilled music behind it. I really love the music you're playing behind it. So really,
Yeah.
bro, don't overthink it. If you got more stuff like this for us, please just come out with it. And in the same vein, I really liked
Yeah.
it. Shout out,
Hey,
chat. Hit
hey,
one if you
can I just answer somebody in the chat real quick?
go on, go on.
Yeah, I looked right here. Note thyself. He says there's a theory that the white crown was a symbol of a rock formation at Jebel Barkil. And he's absolutely right about that. And that's actually a very symbolic place over there. And the sun goes down directly on that white crown. And there are many Nubian kings who were crowned at that location. And yeah, you're definitely onto something there. I
Mm,
actually did a whole video about that. I actually showed I showed a lot of clips of that sun. It goes down exactly mathematically down on that white crown right there.
wow. Have you
There's,
done a
yeah,
video on this?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a video called. I know one of them was why would Taharka build his pyramid in Murray or something like that.
Right,
I
right.
definitely did though. Yeah, I went extensively into that Jebel Barkel.
Wow.
You got to get on top of that. It's a very symbolic place.
Okay, that's one I have to look for on your channel. Again, remember, amazing black people. Hit subscribe on his channel. Let's go on to the next video. I had um there's one. I had quite a few videos up that I wanted to get through, but we've
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
done we've
I
gone
mean, we
on
don't have
to
to watch the whole thing. We
yeah.
don't have to watch
Well,
the whole thing.
I it the my I'm gonna have to settle for this just one more right now because but I have to do
Okay.
this one more, and it's called. Let me see if I can get it up. A slave mistaking for Moorish royalty. Guys, get ready. Now we're moving off of Egypt now. Okay. This is some of the stuff that you're gonna get when you go onto Brother Amazing Black People's channel. And I'm gonna play this for you. And again, same as we did with that first video, he's gonna stop it as and when he feels like it, and he's gonna take us through
Oh
some
boy.
of the wisdom. This this video I found really interesting. This video I found really
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm just gonna see what the people make of
Told you in
this.
the 19th century, the average American wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a Negro slave and an ancient Moor. Well, that was exactly the scenario in the early 1800s, and when Prince Al Rahman met up with President John Adams and secured his freedom. At this time, in the European and American consciousness, the Moors were still black people that were living in their homelands, and they were still celebrating throwing these people out. And by the time we finish this video today, you will see clearly that there are many descendants of these Moors walking around in America today. And we're going to be asking ourselves once again, why do they keep changing their story?
So I've given you enough a few seconds there to kind of recalibrate
Uh-huh.
and figure out what's happening now. Now that you've probably been reminded what this video is about because it's a long time
Yeah.
we did this as well.
I
Can you
I
give us
remember this one.
can you give us the background on this one?
Okay. Yeah. This video I had made for the white supremacists. I really didn't make this video for black people because I feel like if you come into my channel and watch this type of video, you already know what a Moor
Mm,
is. But this is more of an answer, to the white supremacist who says that the Moor was nothing but a Turk Arab, Caucasian. But we know that's not the case 100% of the time. And what I found interesting about this story was that this guy was kidnapped from West Africa. He was brought here as a slave, and the Americans, yeah, he was a prince who could write in Arabic, and so the Americans thought that he was a prince of Morocco, and that he was a black man. Right now, if you try to say a black Moroccan today, people are going to act like they don't know what you're talking about. But but back then, you very well could have been a black person who was also a prince of Morocco, like just a totally normal day. And yeah, they thought he was a prince of Morocco, but he was not. He eventually made it to the president of the United States Oval Office, told the president that he was not a prince of Morocco, that he actually came from some area, uh, came from around the area of Sierra Leone. And president looked at him, said, "Oh, sorry, can't help you get back over there." And what I found interesting, though, the reason why I made the video was that, back then everyone knew that a Moor was a person from Morocco, a Moorish person, the ones hanging in Spain. Back then they knew that these was black people. But now, modern times, doesn't tell you it was an Arab only. And it's just another example, how abusive they are in history towards Black history for some reason.
mm, mm. Check out my video, guys. I don't want to be messing around and loading up images right now. But check out my video on the Moroccan Sultan Moulay Ismail. I think the longest reigning and the most influential in of all their sultans in at least the
Hmm.
last 400 years, and he's the I think the founder of the Alawite dynasty that is in Alawi dynasty that's in charge in Morocco today. Now, this was a black man. This was a black man that was spoken about, written about. His mother, we know for sure, was a Fulani woman, and if you know who the Fulanis are, they're black people from all over West Africa and West Africa. They're massive. They've got massive populations across the north of Nigeria, in Mali. They're black folk. They're black folk. And this king of Morocco, that's his heritage. Okay, that's his heritage. Now, you have a country in Africa, bearing the name of the Moors.
Hmm.
And that name goes back to blackness before it ever had anything to do with Islam. Okay, again, this is how you know that somebody has real mental health issues. The Moors have nothing to do with black people, and you know the person saying that knows for a fact that
Yeah.
the word Moor, before it had anything to do with Islam, had to do with blackness. So which one is more apropos? Okay, how do we normally do history? Do we go for the more recent interpretations of iterations
Hmm.
of something, or do we go to the earliest iterations of something? The only time you go for
Hmm.
more recent iterations of something is when it comes to black history. That's
Yeah.
when that's when the rules of doing history and research are turned on its head. When it's black people stuff, all of a
Hmm.
sudden we forget how that word was properly used, widespread
Hmm.
used across the different how it was used widespread across the different places that it was used in. We forget all of that, and we localize it all of a sudden to Islam. It was Islam. It's nothing to do with color. That's a lie. And again, mental health issues with a lot of these people. They I think
Yeah.
again, shout out to the brother King's monologue. I was watching one of your lives not long ago, and he said some of these people literally wake up in the morning and think, damn, GD, these black MFers. What? Oh, I need to get me a N word today. This is how they think. They wake up.
Yeah.
They wake up with what's on their minds, and they get on their little computers and they look for. It's sad, but and
It really is.
the
Hmm.
thing about it is they're not as they're not as niche as you might think. A lot of
Yeah.
people are walking around like this. They've got these deep-seated prejudices to just letting us have anything,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But what the brother ABP is saying here is that, you know, you've got a man who was found in America, and he was obviously a Moorish prince, but they didn't think to return him to Mali, which was, you know, back then another Moorish polity. They didn't think to return him back to Mali or the Song guys. They thought to return him to Morocco. Why would you
Yeah.
do that if the Moors were never black? Why would you?
Yes. Why would you do that if it's very obvious that the Moor, is he's either a quote unquote Arab or some sort of European? No, they looked at a black slave and said, "Oh, we thought you were a prince of Morocco." Think about it.
I'm gonna hit play.
Go ahead.
Let's get it.
Yeah. Mhm.
The story of Al Rahman is backed up by army colonels, secretaries of states, doctors, and many eyewitnesses. Al Rahman was a prince of the kingdom Futa Yalan, which is a Fulani type kingdom located in West Africa. Fulani people are found across Africa from east to west, all the way down to the Congo. They have since mixed in with all kinds of people in the past few hundred years, and their genomic ancestry tends to cluster more towards Central Sudanic type people and populations from Chad. Now let's get to Al Rahman himself. The prince was born in the legendary Timbuktu, where he received his education, which we all know was a tradition. He was the rightful heir and the future king of his nation. His brother's mother was a Susu, while his mother was a Moor. If he and his brother were both here in the United States, they would have been considered Moors, because at that time, people couldn't tell the difference between a Moor and any other black person. His uncles and his cousins were famous people, and their cities were considered to have an advanced degree of civilization. Eventually, as a child, he makes it to the new capital of his father's kingdom, where he raises up to command armies. A white man arrives in his kingdom, who was Dr. Cox. He was a surgeon. Citizens of his kingdom carried this man back, where he was entertained for about 6 months, and they treated him very well. And this was a turning point for the prince. Al Rahman was a military commander, and the kingdom had been allegedly being harassed by the Igbos, and he had been sent over to fight them. He went with a group of about 1,700 men for retaliation, and he was successful against them, but eventually was taken prisoner by the Igbos. No disrespect to Igbos, if y'all didn't do that. They surprised him, and they pretty much ambushed him. He was sold to the Mandingos. The Mandingos turned around and sold him to a slave ship at the mouth of the Gambia. From there, he was carried over here to the United States, where he was sold to one Thomas Foster. To make a long story short, this Foster found out that his slave was an African prince, commanded armies, could read and write, and do all kind of stuff. And he also figured out that his slave was more educated than most white people at the time. When we fast forward about 20 years.
So I'm just going to stop it there. Imagine having this guy sold into slavery in the States, and the white American masters like discovering that this guy is more educated than him, like more knowledgeable. Like imagine the shock that guy must have like received just finding that out. That's just amazing to me.
It is amazing, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna press play again.
Here's this same Dr. Cox, who his family had taken care of back in the Old Kingdom, came across him here in North America. Knowing who this guy was, this creates a flurry of activity that eventually gets Al Rahman released from slavery. Let's take a look real quick at how that happened. This same Dr. Cox attempted to get Al Rahman out of this slavery, and he had failed that first time. He eventually gets other people involved. Including Colonel Marshall. They wanted Al Rahman to write a letter home to see if he can get back. And so sometime around 1826, the prince sat down and wrote a passage from the Quran. Now here's the important part. When these people saw what he wrote down, they automatically assumed that he was a member of the royal family of Morocco. This is an important point of this video now. Now, we all know the Eurocentrics love to run around telling us that Morocco was a Turk Arab, rather than saying who the Moors really were. And at the height of American slavery in the 19th century, these people looked at a Negro slave and assumed that he was a prince of the royal family of Morocco. Let's remember that. That tells us that they couldn't tell the difference between a Moor and any other Negro slave walking around. They would have blended right in. Now, getting back to our story, Al Rahman had wrote down this passage from the Quran. Colonel Marshall ended up getting this passage into the hands of the United States government. What ends up happening is they forward this letter to the United States consul in Tangier in North Africa. They presented this same thing that he wrote to the Emperor of Morocco, to the Sultan, and at once the Sultan said, let this guy go, set him free, and bring them back to Morocco. Again, the Eurocentrics tell us that we never even made it to Morocco, yet somehow, some
And I forget his name, but that's the Sultan of Morocco at that time was a grandson or son of the black sultan I just mentioned, Sultan Moulay Ismail.
Yeah.
Um and I've seen descriptions of him, contemporary descriptions of him. A lot of the time he was mistaken for a full Negro. Okay, he was
Yeah.
obviously admixed,
Hmm.
um, but and so to see him, you'd in the context of America today in 2025, you'd look at him and you'd call him black, no problems, no questions asked. But
Yeah.
in that time and space, he certainly wasn't in the blackest in Morocco at the time, but
Yeah.
you would look at him in modern white spaces today and call him easily without blinking twice. You'd call him black. So this is the guy that this Malian prince is being returned to. This is the king of Morocco at the time himself,
Hmm.
quite easily passing for a full-on black person, but he was biracial himself.
Right. Hmm.
way, the Sultan of Morocco, who knew there were Negro slaves over here, said, yeah, go ahead and send that guy back. Never mind the fact that Al Rahman never said he was from Morocco. We're going to get to that, but let's keep going. So Al Rahman had some money sent to him to get back to Morocco, personally given to him by the Sultan. Pretty soon, the Secretary of State, Clay, recommended to the President of the United States that we should get this so-called slave back to Morocco. And by the end of the 1820s, the so-called Master Thomas Foster agreed to the release of the prince, and he received no money. He just didn't want Al Rahman walking around as a free man in America because, this is America. It's important for us to note, once again, that the Sultan of Morocco knew that the Americans kept Negro slaves, and he still sent money anyway on behalf of Al Rahman. Let's remember that Al Rahman was going to meet up with the president, and this president, his father, was one of the men that signed the peace treaty with the Moroccans. So let's
Hey,
remember before we get to this that John Adams
hey,
knew
can you pause that
exactly
real
what a Moor
quick?
was.
Yeah, that was Adams who he met up with. Yeah, his father. Yeah, his father was one of the people responsible for writing the original peace treaty with with the Moroccans in the first place. And yeah, so point that I was making there was that he sat there in front of the president of the United States, who was a man who knew exactly what a Moor was, and even then, he made it all the way to the presidency of the United States. Everybody thinking he was a Moor. And I think that ultimately, I didn't need a whole video to say that the Americans knew what a Moor was back then, and now they act like they don't know what it is.
Um,
I think that's essentially what I was a long-winded way. This video was a long-winded way for me just to say that, I would say.
hmm.
This Colonel Marshall was the authorized agent of the government and had received instructions to forward the prince to the seat of government without delay. So we see at the time that they had no problem with the Black Moor. I threw up right now a general from the Napoleon Wars. This man would have looked over his shoulder at Al Rahman. He would have known exactly what he was looking at if he would have
Yep.
talked to Al Rahman for even 10 seconds, because all the people that talked to this man knew that he was somebody. And so he ended up staying because he tried to get all his family, his children and grandchildren, so that he could take them on, but he was never able to do that. And eventually, this whole situation started to become an embarrassment to the United States government. And it was going to become even more of an embarrassment because Andrew Jackson was about to overshadow John Quincy Adams. And we all know that he wasn't having any of this stuff. Eventually, the prince gets more friends. They start appealing to Christian charities. The prince gets a letter of commendation from the Secretary of State, and he went around doing a tour of the northern cities, Philly, New York, Boston. Went to all these places, told them all his life story. They should have known by at that point that he wasn't from Morocco, but they continued to accept him as a Moorish prince anyway. And what's interesting is when he went around and did all this, they really didn't care about what he could actually tell them about Africa. They were already coming up with their own stories for Africa, so they didn't need him anyway. Eventually, in order to get money so he can get his family back, they wrote up a pamphlet featuring a short version of his life story, and he went around selling this thing, and it never was enough at the end of the story. I got my hands on the original document. Here we see it printed up for us, and I couldn't help but notice that it said that this is a statement with regard to the Moorish Prince Abdul Rahman by the guy who started the asylum for the education of the deaf and dumb. I said that is some poetic justice right there when you really look at that. The education of the deaf and dumb.
Yeah.
So we see here a copy of the actual pamphlet. So he went around to all these places. He was known as a Moorish prince. In no time did anyone stop this man and say, hey, wait a minute, you're a Negro. How are you a Moor? Because there was no train of thought like that at the time. It wasn't until they started making Hollywood movies that these people started really doing that. But anyway, when you open up the pamphlet, the first thing that you're going to see is that he was a native of Timbuktu. All right, it doesn't say anything in there about Morocco, although that area around Timbuktu was sometimes called Morocco. It goes on to say that he has a famous family. He was a slave for a long time. They talk in all kinds of flowery language about him. It includes all kinds of witnesses. Nathaniel Ware, Dr. Cox himself. We see what Nathaniel Ware said himself, that he lived next door to the prince and his master for 10 years and knew the worth of the prince and the truth of the above statement, meaning everything that had been said before that in the pamphlet. They even go on to say that there's even more testimony that they could have put in there, but they said everything that they had at that point was sufficient, and it was sufficient because Al Rahman made it into the White House to speak to the president. He even made appearances in Congress where he went to various committees. He wanted to sell his pamphlet, get a donation. He wanted to get a donation from the president for his pamphlet. The president said, no, I don't need that. I'm not going to be buying that. But if President Adams had bought that pamphlet, he would have found out much sooner that Al Rahman was a prince in Fouta Yalan and not Morocco. In the meantime, his former master allegedly was saying if he didn't leave the United States, he would have to be a slave again. Imagine that. Imagine speaking to royalty in such a way. It makes sense to me because they were very much afraid of the slaves hearing about this stuff and getting inspired. And let's remember that they wanted to make sure the slaves couldn't read, didn't know anything, and weren't getting inspired by anybody.
I think you hit it right on the head there without even knowing it. I mean that without that being the thrust of what you were saying, I think you hit the nail on the head there. If it that same rationale, I think, is behind. I mean, you'll never get this admitted, ever. Okay, but that same rationale is really at the root of denying Black people these spaces in history. Is at the root of saying that, oh no, the Moors is strictly sub-Saharan. No way that the sub-Saharan element in amongst the Moors were just, they were slaves, slave soldiers, yeah. But that's really it, because if it's there's still this need for society, and for better or worse, I feel like that's us. We're the ones who drew the short end of the straw in recent times anyway. There's a need to have a permanent underclass, somebody that we can all join together and say, at least we're better than them.
Yeah.
And that's it. You can't, if you seize these spaces, these narratives, then all of a sudden, who are you gonna be looking down at? Who's the permanent underclass that you're gonna be saying that you're all gonna be coming together and rolling your Black fatigue and all of this? Who that's gone, because it wasn't always so. So I think that's partly why you said in the video there, you said they were scared that it would inspire the slaves, you know. So they had to
Yeah.
get rid of this story somehow. Sorry, go on. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah. What you just described is what I used to call the fake hierarchy, where where people come up with these phony hierarchies to feel better about their position
Right.
in life. And I call it the fake hierarchy. And me personally, I just do not subscribe to fake hierarchies anymore, and I do not recognize them either. And so if
Mm,
anyone comes up to me expecting me to participate in the fake hierarchy, good luck, because you're just a human being to me. You know,
mm,
unless you're coming with some sort of actual authority behind you,
mm,
like a badge or something. Yeah, we got to get rid of this fake hierarchy because it's hurting humanity in so many
mm,
ways, and
mm,
it's just living in a fantasy land. Here in the United States, there's certain elements. You know what? I'm not even going to mention any certain peoples by name, but there's certain elements here in America, that tries to compete with Black people when we're not even looking in their direction to compete with them. And
mm.
and again, because they're in a low position, they want to try to have an invisible competition with Black people. It's like, man, you need to be worried about protecting your neck instead of looking over here. you know but so it's the fake hierarchy. People need, it's like a dopamine shot so they can feel better.
Yeah.
At least I'm closer to the white man, so I'm good. No, you're never
Yes,
good.
that's it.
You're
That's
never
it.
good. Yeah,
That's
your
it.
life is built on a lie, actually.
Yeah.
And we got to be, it's like, as Black people, we got to live in reality. We got to stop living in fantasy lands. That's the Anglo-Saxon who lives in a fantasy world. We got to live. You mentioned Black fatigue. Well, imagine hundreds of years of this nonsense. You want to come to us about fatigue,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? How dare you talk about what you tired of when you over here are the same nonsense? I'm over here talking about what you said 150 years ago, and
Yeah.
y'all still on the same nonsense,
Yeah. Yeah.
And how about come up with some fatigue for them, you
Mm,
know? It's ridiculous. Just the fact that I had to make this video to talk about a Black Moorish person, right?
mm, mm, mm.
Fatigue.
Yeah.
You know, and ultimately we shouldn't have to do this because when we want to talk about the Japanese history, we don't have to
Thank
squint our
you.
eyes,
Thank you. Thank
right?
you. We don't
When
have
it
to
that,
we don't have to wade through who's a Japanese and who's a real Japanese and this and that. We just
hmm
talk about the history. So I saw someone earlier in the chat saying, y'all are obsessed. I don't know if who that was directed at, but if that's directed at us, well, yeah, we are because you're obsessed. You when you stop being obsessed, we'll stop being obsessed,
right.
But until you can just um
Uh,
grow
uh,
an actual sense, a proper sense of self-esteem, and stop downplaying other people's contributions, then we'll stay obsessed all day long.
it's a nonstop attack. These people have, I call it Mandingo on the brain. It's a nonstop attack. And when the mosquito is constantly buzzing in your ear, and you turn to the mosquito and say, "Will you please leave?" The mosquito says, "You're obsessed with me," but the
Yeah,
mosquito is still buzzing by your
yeah,
ear,
yeah,
though,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? Because it's his natural right to bite you in the arm, and to make you bleed, and to make you irritated.
yeah.
And so,
And
he's
again, someone in the chat said that black fatigue is even a word that a black person coined, and so I know about that. I've heard of that. That it's
it's all
actually
kind of it's all kind of sellouts. It's all kind of plants.
mm,
Just because somebody's Black doesn't mean he's your brother or your friend.
mm,
And so, it's a lot of sellouts. You know what
mm.
I'm saying? And yeah, Black fatigue. It's just another one of those things that's a part of the phony hierarchy. And sometimes you just got some stuff that you got to ignore it because people
This
don't have
isn't
much to talk
this
about.
none of this is an issue. None of this is an issue. None of this history is a big deal out if it isn't the fact that we have to actually reappropriate it and put it back in its proper context. Where the only
Yes.
group right, we're coming to the end of this because I don't want to take too
hmm
much of your time again. And I've been missing in terms of my lives recently, nation, but I will
hmm
get more regular with them. It's just hard to do both. It's hard to do research and then do lives as well. But I recently had somebody hit me up in the comments, and guys,
hmm
always, if you got information, if you anything you want to say, just make sure you commenting on the videos. I love reading your stuff. I love reading the some of the best ideas I've had for videos and information I've got come from people commenting below in the comment section. So please keep that up, family. But I wanted to say, recently someone hit me up with some real knowledge. He said, look up Jabir al Said al Jabir or something. Look him up. He
Yeah,
was one of the best chess players ever.
yeah,
Black guy. Now, before, if I was doing this 2 years ago, I would have thought, oh great, let me look him up and
mm,
find this. But already now, 2 years into this channel, okay, 2 years
mm-hmm,
and into this channel, I know now. I'm not green anymore. I know that I'm gonna Google this guy, and I'm gonna have to wade through a load of misinformation first before I find who this guy actually was. And as soon as I
yeah,
did that, I googled the name Said Al Jabir, one of the greatest chess players to ever live, black
mm-hmm,
guy. But
mm-hmm,
the images you get on YouTube, sorry, on Google, the default images of a Caucasian dude cosplaying in a turban, that's what you get. But
wow,
actually, even Wikipedia admits,
mm,
and I say admit deliberately because it doesn't tell you in the first paragraph, it doesn't tell you in the second. You have to get through the third paragraph, and even then, it says it begrudgingly. It says he was an Abyssinian, originally an Abyssinian who lived
wow,
in modern day Iraq. I can't remember which, caliphate now. But Umayyad maybe. But originally in Abyssinian. If you know anything about history and names, Abyssinia is Ethiopia, and but the Wikipedia article went on to say, but there's still some debate. So I go to the sources because everybody knows who does research. You don't go to Wikipedia for Wikipedia's sake. You go to Wikipedia for the citations, for the actual academic work that's cited. So you go to
yep,
the citation for the fact that he's Abyssinian, and you go to the books. And these are old books, and they just matter of factly tell
yeah,
you, yeah, this guy was a Negro. He's a Negro chess player, Ethiopian. All accounts say he's an African person, blah blah blah. So I'm thinking to myself,
yes,
obviously a black dude, a Moorish black dude, out of place a little bit. He's in Iraq. He's in is it the Umayyad or the Fatimids? I think the Fatimids is Egyptian, but he's a black guy. Why is it him? Why is it our people or our people that look like us in history that we have to wade through the BS about and find out who they actually were? Do you get what I'm saying, ABP?
yes. I mean, this is something that I have. That man, this is something that has been vexing me for years. Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to
So
go
now,
look up,
sorry. I'll let you answer that. So sorry, I just want to finish off
yeah,
and say. So now, if I wanted to make a video about that guy, I
yeah,
first have to wade through. I first have to anticipate the people who are going to be coming in the comments saying
it's
he
crazy.
wasn't black. He wasn't black.
Yes, it is
I can't just
so
tell us. I can't just
ridiculous.
tell a straight story about this black dude from history. You know?
Right. Man, let me tell you something. It's just nothing but drag. It's crazy to me. Like it's beyond evil, actually. When you think about it, like if I want to go and look up the ancient history of India, you're gonna have no problem finding some dude, right? You want to go. It doesn't matter where it is. It's like they're not going to do some obfuscation of who somebody is. But if it has anything to do with black, even what you said with this guy, they said he was Abyssinian. You got to remember that sometimes they would say the Abyssinian is actually a Caucasian. And so, it gives them it gives them that way out, by saying Abyssinian. And man, I honestly, man, what we need is just more black scholars. We need more people from inside Africa becoming scholars of all these subjects. And also in the so-called diaspora, doesn't matter whether it's America, Brazil, whatever, we need more actual black people because it's just nothing but overwhelming European information. And we need more black people to become scholars. It's more than enough now that can do it. And then, and yeah, and black people, one thing I do know are real big on education and getting educated. And yeah, and we need more of that. You won't need to complain about the European making all the books anymore. It's like
mm,
we need more people. Me, I'm just one person. I'm just a regular guy in the neighborhood
mm,
making slideshows, right? And again, we could just get one person inspired, just from this alone. It's like we need it. We need you guys again on archaeology, especially on DNA. It's like most Black people's DNA is not being studied. It's 90% of it is European DNA,
mm,
and so ultimately it's just going to be up to the community, to everybody, to inspire everyone to start getting on top of these things and to become the scholars of ourselves instead of relying on them all the time.
mm,
It's like we can sit up here and read Dr. Ben all day. We can look at Sheikh Anti Diop all day, but we need a modern day Sheikh Anti Diop. We need a modern day Dr. Ben, right? We need modern day Marcus Garvey's or whoever's here to teach us. We need more of it. So, again, I'm just one person and one voice in the world. But if I could leave you guys with anything today, is we need more Black scholars so that we don't got to sit up here doing these live streams, but we're
mm,
actually, getting in there and affecting what's going on.
mm, mm, mm. Thank you so much, man. Guys, I'm gonna
Yeah,
let the brother ABP go because we've been doing this for a minute now, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
I want to say shout out to all of you. You guys have this is a very small channel, and to have 100 and I think I can see right now is 120 over 120 people watching a live stream with just 20K subscribers. That's actually that's really good. I've seen channels with several hundreds of thousands of subscribers like struggle to get like 20 people watching concurrently. So thank you guys. This is I'm really proud of you guys, and thank you to my guests, amazing Black people. I really want to have him
Thank you.
back at some point because I'm telling you now, his channel is filled with like he's forgotten more things than I'm still to learn. So if you're a real scholar out there, make sure you go over to Amazing Black People, subscribe, and that will encourage him to be putting out more stuff for us as well, guys. I really hope you do that.
I
um
Yeah, no, I am gonna put some more stuff out. I'm not, I can't sit here and promise like full on productions like how I did in the past, but yeah, I'm definitely still putting stuff out, and I'm currently working on some stuff to upload now. And yeah, I just want to say thank everybody for being here, and I appreciate y'all taking the time out of your day just to listen to me. And Trill, if I come back on again, I'm gonna try to be a little bit better
oh no, no,
in
don't you
my
don't
answers
do that.
because I
Nah,
feel
don't
like
do that.
sometimes I'm rambling a little bit, but
No,
it's
no,
my
no, not at all, not at all. Because you've already done the work. You've already done your work speaking for you. So I just
yeah.
wanted you out there to, I wanted to be more about you anyway. But so
Hmm.
no, it wasn't meant to be some kind of academic chat or anything like that. Just I
Right.
wanted people to know more about you and your work because I kind of feel like it feels I'm the kind of person I feel fake. I feel fake if I'm if I don't like if I'm coming up on the shoulder of somebody and I'm talking without mentioning that person. I feel like a fraud. I feel like, come
Right.
on, you've got to let people know about that. This isn't some kind of, you're not some genius. You're coming up on the back of someone else's inspiration, someone else's work. So that's all this is. This
No
isn't
doubt.
about,
Yeah.
you coming up and you done brilliantly, man. You've given us some great information out here tonight, and I hope people just go over to your channel and subscribe there. I hope to have you back at some point if you will allow that.
Yeah.
But for now, guys, thank you all for joining us. If you just hang on and I'll just chat with you on the other side of this ABP. All right,
Okay.
guys. Kush to Compton. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Wildflower. Thank you, RJ McKenzie, Magic Commander. You've been fantastic. King's Monologue. Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining us. Big up yourself, says King's Monologue and ABP. Thank you, all of you. Kush to Compton, no doubt. Peace out, everyone. Bye.
Peace.